Hello, this is Corey Peel, and I'm very happy to be with you today. Welcome to Digiversity. And today we're going to be focused on using technology to sustain and maintain an effective church life. I'm going to say welcome to the students in the chat, just so you can reply. So those of you who are able to reply in the chat, please do so. So those of you who... Great. So for those of you who are joining us today, I want you to get familiar with the Brushfire platform. Yes, okay, I do see Jean Dougherty saying hello, so thank you very much. So I wanted you to do this because I wanted to make sure you were familiar with the way this platform works. So we'll be viewing the videos. Most of the other classes are going to be pre-recorded with live chat interaction. For this session, because of some of the things I want you to provide, we're going to be a bit more interactive. So I appreciate those of you who are providing feedback in the chat. Also, if you look at your screen, you'll see that there'll be a question for ideas and feedback, and that'll pop up another form. So we're going to get to that in a moment, but also you can provide information in that form at any time. It's for your general ideas and feedback. And also good morning to Evelyn Brown as well. Thank you very much. And so just in terms of the overview of this course, there are two things I want to review with you. So first is just a general overview, answering this question. So what is needed in order to sustain and maintain an effective church life? And let's just think about this, not just in general, but also right now in 2021. It's about a year since we've had shutdowns with the churches. And so you may have a different set of questions, different needs may come up, but there are some needs that are basically the same, and we just have different ways of meeting them. So we're going to address this and then understanding who are the people you serve and what are their needs. There are some things that we're doing for ourselves and for our congregation, whereas others we're doing with other people. So again, thank you for everyone who's saying hello in the chat. And then I'll also provide some free resources and then some information about other resources you'll be able to leverage. And then just to go a little bit deeper, the goal at the end of this course is that you'll be able to envision the future exceptionally through a design thinking workshop. And so you may be wondering, what is design thinking? Well, we're going to answer that question a little bit later on in this session today. We're going to be applying some of the tools and techniques leveraged in Silicon Valley to address some of the activities in this class. And again, I work at Google as a customer engineer. So some of these tools and techniques are things that we will sometimes use with our customers or internally, just so we can get quickly to an answer and then test and prototype what we think might be a solution. So then if it's the wrong one, you can quickly iterate and go back and find something else that works. So we'll understand a bit more of this planning process, the role of technology to support the mission of the church and Christ-centered evangelism. And this is also something I want to emphasize. We're going to be going over a few case studies, including case studies from individuals in different parts of ministry. You'll have at least one special guest talking to you about how they're leveraging technology and different mechanisms of communication for evangelism specifically. And then also when we're thinking about this course, we want to make a distinction between things that are for marketing purposes and advertising versus ways of getting out the word and ways of approaching evangelism, because it may seem similar at first, but there is a difference between just telling someone about a bunch of wonderful things, great events happening at the church, versus really connecting with them and giving them the type of message they need to hear based on what's going on in the world today. And also to make sure that you are addressing the needs, not just only externally, but also internally. And then there's a bit of a bonus here because as you look at some of these tools, you'll be able to have a resource to create the church, or sort of reinvent the way you're leveraging the church as a way to help people grow digital skills and provide opportunities. So besides that, the first piece, which is the important work of evangelism, you also have people who can learn to apply these skills either for job training or to maybe someone who's not necessarily as technical may become a part of your media ministry. So you are able to leverage these things. But again, we are really focused on being Christ-centered. And what we're discussing in this class, we're using tools and techniques from a technology perspective. But just remember that the main goal is specifically around Christ-centered evangelism. And if you have any questions as well, feel free to ask those also in the chat. But good morning to everyone. I'm really glad you're interacting there. And so we are going to have a lot of activities within Digiversity. So for this class session, we're going to be meeting. Again, there's going to be live interaction during the scheduled lecture. This session will also be available on demand afterwards. And then we will also today have a group discussion at 4 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And so you should also see this in the recommended next sessions, and a link will be also available. So definitely come back and log into the platform later today, and you'll be able to join the meeting. We're going to be leveraging Google Meet today at 4 p.m. Central and 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And next week, we're going to be focusing on evangelism and discipleship and hearing a bit more about some of these case studies. Also, really focusing on some of the areas of need and where you've identified those needs within your community and your church. And then on the 22nd, we're going to talk a bit more about outreach and inreach and how to share information in different ways. On the 29th, we're going to get into even more case studies and curated examples from the convention. So those of you who are inside of the panel, there will be a syllabus with a high-level overview of just the names of some of the case studies we're going to be addressing. But these are also going to include you and maybe some of your case studies, because some of you might be leaders of a media ministry or pastors in a congregation where you've resolved very specific problems, and it's useful for us to share these ideas with each other during this period. And also we have a way for you to become guest speakers and to be a part of this communication platform. And then finally, between April 15th and the end of Digiversity on April 12th, we'll focus on making sure you have your action plan. Some of you may be able to implement some of these early action plans and prototype early on, hopefully maybe the end of next week or this week. And some may have some things you need to work out and research until you get to your action plan. But we want to make sure everyone has something very, very specific to bring back to their organization. So now I'm going to pause and see if you can, again, you can put some of this in the chat, but I would also like you to take the time to click on the link that says ideas and feedback. And when you click on that link, I want you to enter information in that form, so you'll have the ability to just talk about some of your initial ideas and also share what you want to get out of the class in terms of feedback. And we're going to be doing this several times, so it's okay if you don't have some of those answers right now. So I'm going to put also a link to the form in the chat. We're going to be using a Google form. It should be accessible to you. If you have any issues accessing it, please let me know. And I'm going to just wait a brief moment while you do that. And again, in terms of what you want to get out of this class, you signed up for a reason, and there may be something specific you want to get out of it. Maybe there's something useful you want to share because you have a background in a certain area. Maybe you know some people who provide implementation services, maybe supporting your church or your ministry, and you want to share those resources with others. Maybe you teach a course with the Sunday School Publishing Board or another course in the Congress, or you may be teaching a class in your local Sunday school, or again, you may be an expert in a certain area. So please share these ideas. And again, this is it's anonymous, but we do have an optional place for you to put your contact information, just in case you may ask to be a part of one of the case studies, or if you want to be included as a guest speaker. So I'm going to pause for 5 minutes to make sure everyone has a chance to to do their work. Okay, and someone says they're not seeing or hearing anything. If you are not seeing or hearing the class, and I just see someone saying that they can't hear. So let's just make sure everyone is able to see what's live on the platform. And I'm going to just let you know that the platform is live. Okay, I am speaking. Let's make sure you are able to view. Okay, and I'm just going to say some people were saying that they weren't able to view, so click play if you see play. If you don't see play, then let me know. Okay. Okay, then. And so what I'm going to do now, for some people who may be having some issues with connectivity, I am going to provide you with a direct link. Let's see here. Let's see. So please, let's see. For those of you who are having issues connecting, please click on the YouTube link I just shared. We will check with the team to see the issue, to resolve the issue. Okay. Yes. So right now, I do see the video working in the platform for me. And so I want to make sure everyone is able to see that. Okay. Okay, great. So I did get the confirmation from Evelyn Brown that you're able to see and hear. Actually, in the Brushfire platform, you should also be able to see this video. And so what we'll do is I just went through a bit of an introduction, and now we are in the process of getting some feedback. And those of you who are also a part of this class, I want to make sure you are aware that today we are going to have a discussion session. We'll be having a discussion session today. And okay. I see Roy Elliott has given feedback as well. So for those of you who are there, I want to just make sure we address this within the Brushfire platform. So I will just briefly go on hold for one moment and just double check to see what may be happening within that platform. And so because this is an online platform, what I'm doing now is just checking to see if there have been any updates or changes to the channel content, and if there are issues in terms of permission, any permission to view the content. So just give me one moment and I'm going to view that. In the meantime, please fill out this form. I'm going to put the form in the Brushfire chat again, and I'm also going to put this in the YouTube chat. And so those of you who are just now getting into the video, and I want to have you share some of your concerns and challenges, what you'd like to get out of the class, and also share some of your ideas. And if you are someone in a ministry, and if you have the ability to maybe use a lot of resources already, share with us some of your resources and we can maybe have you as a guest speaker with some of our case studies. And I will give you about let's just say 3 more minutes. So at 20 past the hour, we're going to come back into this. But thank you, and thanks again for your patience here while I just double check the access in the platform. Okay. And then one more piece of feedback for those of you who are watching this in the platform as well. I would like you to do one thing for me, and that's to just go back to the Brushfire part of the platform. And in the Brushfire platform, if you can just check to see if you're able to view the video again. There might be a little bit of a delay potentially. But for those of you who are on the platform, okay, I see, Elliot, there is a second video for 4 p.m. Yeah, there's a second video for 4 p.m. and this is we're currently in the video for today. So I will just double check and make sure that we have the right video showing. But thanks for that, for providing the feedback in terms of the time. Yes, and so the video with the chat where I'm interacting with people now is actually the right one for the session today. So yes, so what we'll do is we'll just continue right now with the video on the chat, and we'll continue with what's actually here today. I'm going to paste this again. Video here. At 4 p.m. Central today, we will have the group discussion in the other video. Okay, great. So what I've done now, I've just put into the chat the information. And so for those of you who are just joining, if you see this in the Brushfire chat, please join the YouTube. Hopefully you've joined the YouTube channel. So I'm going to continue now. And for those who are in chat, I would like you to just type and just confirm that you do see and hear me. So please do that one more time. Just please type in the chat if you can see and hear. The chat that you can see and hear on YouTube directly or in Brushfire. So so those of you who are on the platform, please respond. I just want to confirm you are still seeing and hearing the presentation. Okay, great. So I do see some responses, and you should just see the presentation only. So that's correct. Okay. Okay, great. And then if someone right now, if someone who knows how to do a screenshot, if you can do a screenshot of the Brushfire platform where you were not able to see it here. And I think, Roy, you may have seen something that was for 4 p.m. Just make sure you're able to get that available. Okay. And what we'll do is we will send the feedback to Brushfire just to make sure these are activated. And so so now I'm switching to the needs assessment example. I did receive responses from some of you from the form. So I thank you for those of you who've filled out the ideas form. And so again, some of the thoughts, being excited to learn about new and innovative ways to use technology and being more technology driven. So, and also have some comments about getting more tools in your toolbox, knowing how to use social media, and getting ideas in terms of technology within the church to reach all age levels. And then to understand more about formats for live streaming. So right now, we're going to make sure the things you've requested, if they aren't already directly addressed, we'll be sure to address those before the end of the program. And so now I'm just going over a high-level needs assessment example, because when we're thinking about sustaining the work of the church, there are a lot of different types of things you may be doing with your church. You may have events for different groups. So besides the worship service and Bible study online giving, you also have things that the trustees and the clerk and those who are responsible for the internal operations of the church would have to do. And so how do you do some of those operational things when you're in a virtual environment right now? Some locations, maybe you are able to go into your church, some you may not. And so we'll talk a little bit about some tools available for free that'll help you with some of that productivity from an office standpoint. And then with the seniors, adults, and teens, there are different types of activities you may have within the church, and there may be different needs these communities will have. So the teens may have an interest in maybe learning a bit more about computers or homework help and tutoring. There may be things you're doing with your scholarship groups within the church to help them. The seniors may be interested in just contributing their gifts a bit more for everyone to leverage, but also how do they use online personal health tools, telemedicine. If you're some of the seniors, again, remember the internet was built by people who are seniors today. So some of the seniors may be tech savvy, some may have varying levels of experience. So be mindful that not everyone who's a senior may be in the category of just requiring basic computer skills. They may actually be an expert we can leverage. So you have, again, broad backgrounds, but you also have differences when you get a little bit older in terms of vision. So we may need to make sure people can see things a little bit larger. The fine print may not be as useful for them when they're looking at the smaller hymnals. So there are some other types of needs they may have. And then we also have the adults, and they may have other types of needs in terms of getting access to information within the government. Maybe they're trying to schedule their vaccines. Maybe there's some other things they need to do. Maybe they're entrepreneurs or someone who may have recently lost a job and they're trying to reskill. So what we're going to be doing later on, and this is going to be an exercise for you, you will be able to define what types of needs are the key needs for your church and your community. And so, again, there are some simple things you can do to engage. And again, we're talking about people who are members of your church, but also people who are on the outside. And so if you have a Bible study series, you may have video conferencing. You may, some churches have learning management systems and different ways of really managing their curriculum for Christian education. There may be video sharing. You may use like Google Meet or YouTube or Zoom, but there may be a few quick things you may be able to do. We also have the question of, how do people find you? So if there's someone and they're not a member of a church, and they're in a city, or they may be quarantining in a certain location, how do they find you? If they go on Google or their favorite search engine and they type in something like, where's my closest church, or where can I get Bible study today? Who's offering communion? You have a lot of these different questions people may ask. And so you might have something you can optimize by leveraging Google Maps and the Google search. and having the right keywords and ads, so people who are near you will be able to get access to you and to your church when they're trying to actively find you. And so this is more of the bringing the information to the people directly. In some cases, like in social media and others, you can have targeted ads going out, but sometimes people are just trying to find something. So how do you get things set up so you can be found very easily? And then there are a couple of other things that are tools that are being used by people who are in small groups in some of your ministry organizations. So just don't, even though we're talking about technology, remember the phone and just a regular phone tree is actually very meaningful and effective. People right now are often disconnected. Some people haven't seen family members. I know myself, even we've been social distancing. So there are some family members and people you may not have seen in a long time, and members of the congregation you may not have seen, but you can call and just have direct communication on the phone. Also, remember that the Postal Service is still available. FedEx, you have the ability to use other mechanisms to send postcards or handwritten letters. You can communicate with people without them being on social media, because some people will opt out, and that's okay. I personally opt out of certain social media platforms due to their privacy policies, or because of what's in their policy is something where I don't accept their terms of service. So I may say, no, I'm not using this platform. And I may say, yes, I'm using another platform. So when you're thinking about this, don't think of it as something where people who may opt out of a platform are ones who are just not participating and they get access to very little information, or they don't have access at all. Make sure there's a plan to improve internal and external communications across the board, and also do it in a way that's, again, complying with the relevant laws of the land around privacy, and also, keeping in mind you have a lot of ways to connect, including video games. And this is also a caution for people with children as well. So in a lot of video game platforms, there's the ability to speak to someone over a headset. And so when I was on a platform a while back with the PlayStation Network, there were people who came together for like church services, and there are people who, again, there are people from a lot of different areas, different denominations in some cases, but they would invite people who may not be believers into the session. And again, that's another way of evangelism. It may not be the same as being on the street, but it's still getting out the word, getting out the message. So even things like video games, where you may not initially think that it's a way to communicate, but it actually is. And people use other types of mechanisms for recording the video games and live streaming. So I do see, some people have some chats, so I'm glad you're able to see and hear. And if you are seeing, some are able to see, I believe, the slides, which is correct. You should only be able to see the slides. So I'm just addressing some of the questions that came up. So as long as you're able to hear me and see the slides, then you are okay right now with the platform. And then we'll make sure that this is available for replay and test it so people can have access. And so just going over some of the weekly activities. So again, some of the prayer services and prayer meetings. So and we'll get to some of this in our case studies, but prayer service and prayer is extremely important. So there are some churches are also having morning and evening prayer services for people before and after work. In addition to the normal prayer meeting, you may have midweek worship. There are other types of revivals and activities and events. So these things are still needed and are still happening during the week. And so you may have other types of needs, again, within your church. Like the convention used to have like the singles conference, or there may be other annual days or pastors' anniversary. These things still need to happen, but there's also the administrative side of it. So how do you plan these activities with people? Is there an efficient way to communicate with them? So the same form you use for feedback is also something you can use as a simple form to gather information for volunteers for some activities. You can share a worksheet. So again, these are just some of the examples of weekly activities and some of the examples of communication channels. And so I made this so that it's filling up the screen just so you can see that there's just a lot of different ways of communicating. We'll dive into some of these individually during some of the upcoming weeks, but just keep in mind, you have the ability to connect with people. And so one-to-one connections are still very important when you're working in evangelism, but you also have the one-to-many communication where you're able to send out information over social media, or you're leveraging tools to send email. But again, keep in mind, you want to structure your communication so everyone gets access to the same thing. I don't know if you've been in this type of situation, but it's sometimes unfortunate if everyone else knew about a meeting and you didn't know about it, or there's an annual day at a church in your same city, and you wanted to support them, but you didn't know about it. So, and if someone says, "Oh, well, it was on Facebook," but I'm not on Facebook, so I didn't know. Well, we don't want to have those types of situations. So you want to make sure that the important messages are getting out to everyone through all of the different communication channels. And this includes remembering to call people who might be in a nursing home, or again, if they have a phone in the room, they have the ability to communicate with you. Some people might not have the ability to speak back, but if they can still hear you, it is still worth giving the call and making sure they hear, so they know people are engaged and there's still activities available. And so when we're thinking about how do you do some of these things when you're planning all of these different events, all these different activities, well, there are some easy things, and these are some things that are free. I know we have varying sizes of congregations, and so I'm making sure that the ones who may not have a large budget to spend on a staff and other activities will have all the tools they need. Also, you should also be aware that some of the largest organizations and other denominations outside of ours are also using some of these free tools. So even if people can't afford it, these tools are actually really efficient. And so with Google for Nonprofits, you have free editions of tools available. So you can also pay $7 a month per user to have certain accounts if you don't want the nonprofit free version. And then the distinction is that Gmail is a consumer type of platform. So even though it's free, but it doesn't give you the ability to have the same type of secure, controlled communications internally. So if you're a trustee, you know that only the trustee board within only your congregation will be sharing certain information. So that's why we structure things so that there's a hierarchy. So if you're in a nonprofit or the business account type, you have things that are managed just within your organization, and you have all the security and control necessary there. And so this gives you the ability to have meetings, also to share documents on Drive, and then share this information with other people. You have Google Docs, which gives you word processing without having to pay a license fee for Microsoft Word or Microsoft Office. So you have, again, with Docs, sheets for spreadsheets, slides instead of PowerPoint. So these are all things that are available to you for free. And it's also the same tools that large companies are using, like Twitter and Salesforce and others, because of the way it gives a lot of communication capabilities, really easy for people to use and leverage. And then Google Sites, I will call out as an easy way to build websites. And sometimes people use these for sites that are for internal use only. And we used to call these communication sites that maybe only people you explicitly add or only within your organization or a certain group. But you also can build a website available to the public. So this means if you have a mostly static website for your church, so again, mostly text and graphics and maybe a few forms here and there, but it's mostly just text and graphics and links. You have the ability to have a website basically for free or at no additional cost. You don't have to pay other hosting. This doesn't give you all the same low-level design features that you would get, because this is designed for a very specific purpose. And if you need those additional design features, there are some other tools you can leverage at a lower cost. But it's important to note here that if you are a church without a site, or maybe your church got a website maybe in the mid-90s when companies were charging a fair amount of money for them, and you just stayed on that same plan, so you may still be paying a lot more than what you actually need to pay to have a website and be on a platform. And again, you have the security built in. And then you have Google Keep, just in terms of just general notes. And then Google Classroom, this is something some of these schools, again, K through 12 and also in higher education, and some universities and community colleges may be leveraging this as well. It's just a way to bring different things together in a particular, for a class purpose. So you would have the Drive, the Meet, you have the ability to have forms available, and then also to give out assignments and then the grades. So some have been leveraging this. Reverend Williams with the Sunday School Publishing Board, I believe at his church also leveraged this as well. So this is an option available, and if it suits your needs, then it's also something you can do for free. And so I'm going to just pause for a moment so I can double check the chat to see if anyone has any questions before I go over some other updates. I do see people are able to see and hear, so thank you for being able to to communicate here live in the chat. So it looks like people are able to still see and hear me. So now I'm going to move forward. I'm going to just briefly review a couple of tools that are available for you if you may not already have a church website, or if you do have one, to make sure you get some things optimized for searching. So there is something that's called Google My Business. But basically, if you don't have a website, you can go to this URL. So this link here, gybo.com/business, and you can claim a site. Let's say if your business or your church, or if you have like an affiliated or foundation, if that's listed but you don't own the listing, you have the ability to claim it. Or you can just create a really simple one-page website that's fully integrated with search and maps. So that way you can put in your times of service, when you're open, or just alert people that your church is not available at certain times. And you can provide links to your YouTube channel or links to your other main website. Again, there are some tools you can use here that are, again, for free. And then also I talked a little bit about these other categories of tools. Again, here we're highlighting things that are available for free, and you may also, again, pay at a relatively small cost, but you can have, again, internal, external communication. So using a calendar, It's extremely useful if you manage events in a calendar entry. I don't know how many of you have had this experience where you're planning for maybe annual days and you don't want to conflict with the annual day of someone else in the same city. And so it's someone might have to go back and look and try to figure out, well, when was this actually? If you did have it marked on a calendar, so think of it as a group calendar or a church calendar, one just for your organization, and then you also have your own personal calendar. You have the ability to just see this in a full calendar view. So you can not only see when these events are happening, but also you have the embedded links to join a meeting or to join a YouTube live broadcast, or you will have links to additional documents that you need for the meeting. So if you think about like the church meeting or trustees meeting, you may have a specific agenda. You can, again, include that in there. So it does make things a little bit more efficient. And those of you who are interested in getting a meeting invitation in the calendar for tonight's discussion session, you can, again, fill out the feedback form again and just say in the feedback that you want to be, you have an email address you want to just have added to the calendar invitation, and then we'll do that. So we're doing this on request. We're not just to make sure you see what that functionality looks like. So again, you have different ways of communicating and different tools. We will go into more examples of these tools, and you'll see some of it when we have some of our later sessions after we do some action plans and other exercises. So again, you can use Google Classroom. We have Google Photos for those of you who are responsible for maintaining the history of your church. This is extremely useful. Also, personally, it may be useful, but this leverages some technologies we refer to as machine learning and artificial intelligence, because you can have a photo, a series of photos, and the technology will understand in general what types of things are in that photo. And so if I have a bunch of photos I took at the Women's Auxiliary Day, and somebody had a purple hat with a feather, and I'm trying to find that photo out of hundreds of photos, I can type in the search purple hat with feather or purple hat, and then it'll bring back the images with a purple hat in it. So it just makes certain things a little bit more efficient for you, so you don't have to label and tag everything yourself. And so this is extremely useful, especially if you are converting your photo archive into a digital format. And so then you have, again, a lot of these photos, but how do you organize it? Later on, people may also tag individual people and faces. That's a bit of a choice you want to make, depending on your own, desired privacy and security policies. So I usually recommend not tagging anyone unless you know that they are okay with being tagged and indicated that they're the person in this particular photo. But it definitely makes things really easy to organize and search. And you can create animations. So if you have a church anniversary and you have the photos, you can easily search for different types of events like birthdays, or if you had an outing somewhere. So you can create movies and animations and collages. So again, this is one way you can curate photos for church history and share them with each other. Now, a lot of these other things that are happening in the church these days are virtual events and things that we're doing from a virtual standpoint. And so I just want to go over a few things around digital events. And then after this, we're going to discuss what is design thinking, because during the session later on today, we're going to have a design thinking exercise for you to go in more detail. And if you can't attend the session, that's okay, because it's going to be recorded. So the main idea is that you set aside some time to go through the exercise and do some of the thinking for yourself. So you have the plan you want to make and the feedback necessary for us to go in more detail with your specific plans next week. So when we're thinking about what's needed during the week to sustain church activities, you have an event. So this thing here in the middle is basically like the actual event itself. So before you get there, you have people who've been planning the event. Once everything is already set up from a planning standpoint, you want to announce the event to everyone. So let people know that this event is happening. You may want to attract other attendees. So you've announced it to people who've either subscribed to receive announcements from you, or people you know in your congregation using different techniques. But then you need to maybe attract other people. So maybe the unchurched or the people who are not members, maybe people in other congregations, it's just your congregation. Again, when you think about diversity, again, there was an announcement initially. People who've registered for email updates receive the email, or if they've attended previously, they may have received an email. But then there may be different people that the different church members are pulling in to say, well, this might be an interesting class for you. You were doing a certificate of progress, so maybe you should enroll in some of these other classes this time for credit and to maintain progress there. And so then you engage by giving them a way to communicate with you and provide feedback with the events and sending them the information about your event. Afterwards, you can, again, extend the event. You can embed it and share it in other platforms and expand the community where people can chat and talk. So one way to stay connected, so right now we're using YouTube live streaming. Within the Brushfire platform, there are options to leverage not only YouTube, but also a platform called Vimeo, or you may have other types of live streaming platforms, or you may have a pre-recorded video. So you have a lot of different options available. I actually really recommend checking out this Sunday School Publishing Board and what they're doing on YouTube, because they provide weekly updates for instructors with the information and theme for that week. So if you're using the materials from the Sunday School Publishing Board, you're able to get engaged. And so this is a way they're able to help you prepare for your Sunday school activities. And they are also, this is a perfect example of how they're engaging directly with you. And so, again, you may have some of these things you're doing also in your congregation. And I'm just going to pause for a moment before, let's see, just to see if there are any other questions. Okay, yes, so I don't see anything else in the chat, so I'm going to continue now. And after this, I'm going to just briefly go over how do you get access to some of these tools. And this is a process in and of itself. So as we go through it, feel free to just, again, send something back in the feedback form to say you're interested in leveraging these free tools, but you need some additional help. And we can make sure there's time for you to get that individual attention. And so you have, just going to build this out here. We have tools for G Suite, again, with the nonprofit version. This product is being renamed as Google Workspace, but you get G Suite for free. So the nonprofits, you get the basics, which gives you the everything that you would need from the same as the business version. So you get the core functionality. You also have the ability to get $10,000 a month. This isn't in actual dollars, but this is in terms of ads credits. So when we were talking about how do you attract people or if there's someone sitting in a hotel room somewhere in a city quarantining, and they want to attend the church service virtually, how do they find out which churches are near them, or if they want to connect with a certain ministry, or maybe you're offering Christian education classes or BTU, how do they know? And so for people who are actively searching for things, you have the ability to provide the keywords you want and then the location, and just basically create text ads. So this will surface when someone is searching and it's matching what you are offering or what you believe would be a good match for anyone doing a search like this. So so there's a certain amount you can spend per day in terms of these ads, but you essentially get $10,000 for free per month to do what maybe a commercial company will have to pay $10,000 to do. So this is definitely something to to leverage if you're interested. And then also with YouTube, you can have your own YouTube channel, but there's a feature only limited to not to nonprofits. So if you're having a special event, maybe a concert for fundraising for your scholarship committee, or certain types of activities where it makes sense to leverage the YouTube nonprofit program, you'll be able to have this video promoted a bit more on YouTube. And then you also will have a way for people to click a link and to donate. And based on the circumstances, YouTube may be covering the transaction fees that you normally would have to pay with your church for these types of events. And then finally, within Maps and Earth, you may have some things embedded on your church website to help people figure out how to get there. So we also have the ability to provide that integration. So there are two things here I want to just say. There's, for Google Account for nonprofits, the eligibility criteria is, again, all churches are basically eligible, but there's a third-party company called TechSoup.org, and they manage the eligibility for not just for Google, but for a lot of tech companies and other free resources tech companies are trying to provide to nonprofits and churches. And so once you meet the eligibility criteria they've defined, then you're able to sign up for a nonprofit's account. And now, for the sake of time, I'm going to just briefly go through some of these other features, but we'll come back to this later on because we spent some time making sure people could get access to the video. And so you have, again, mail, calendar, drive to share documents, docs, slides, and sheets. Whereas here, I will call this out. You see, these are individual people in the same document collaborating at the same time. This is the value of using something like Google Sheets versus just people emailing the same document back and forth. So if you've ever been in a situation where someone takes the notes and someone takes minutes and they have to correct the minutes and someone else has different notes and going back and forth, this way everybody sees the notes at the same time. It's also great for brainstorming. So everyone can just list their brainstorms. It's all in one document. So it just makes collaboration in real time more efficient when you're virtual. And so to get started, you're able to go to this link. We'll share this in the platform, and you'll have these resources available when we go over some of the resources in the later sessions. And again, the 501c3, once you sign up and TechSoup confirms the eligibility requirements, then you request access, and then you wait for your verification for Google for nonprofits. It may take 2 days. It may take a little while. So again, within TechSoup, you'll have to just wait until they complete their process. So usually it's just a matter of providing your nonprofit status documents and uploading some of that. Then once that's been activated, then you pick and choose which products you're going to leverage. So maybe you just want to use ads for now. Maybe you want to use the G Suite or Google Workspace collaboration tools. So the person who signs up initially will also have the administrative privileges to select these. And then you can also add someone else to be another administrator so other people can decide which offerings you enable. And then once you enable an offering, then you can be up and running with that offering. So that's basically what we were discussing from a core collaboration requirement for the internal workings of the church when you're distributed like this. And then right now I'm going to go over a couple of things related to the design thinking exercise we're going to be doing later on today during the group discussion session. And so those of you who were looking at something that said 4 p.m. start or 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern start time, it's for that discussion group activity and not necessarily the lecture. So we will, again, get that updated in the platform. And so when it comes to design thinking, this is not something like necessarily revolutionary. It's more of just thinking about some of these ideas in an organized manner so you can get to a quick end result. So some of you will see this and it may be really familiar to you because it may be the way you approach things already. Others, it may just be a slight change because this is designed to get as many ideas as possible on the table before you start to whittle things down and prioritize and say that's a bad idea or we're not doing that. So you want to get all the ideas on the table first, then you can funnel and prioritize. But then once you've identified one you want to try out, we're going to try it out as quickly as possible and be really iterative about it. And we have ways of trying things out where you don't have to completely build something. So from a technical standpoint, if you have an idea for something you might want to do with your church website, again, sometimes it's easy to just prototype and you're doing that with the website, but this early stage, you may decide to just draw something and iterate. So we're going to talk a little bit about design thinking, so you'll be prepared for the session this afternoon. So again, this is a creative problem-solving process that focuses on a user-centered approach to create a solution that's technologically and economically feasible. So when I say user-centered, when you're thinking in the technology world, the users are usually the end user of an application. So the person who's typing in the link to go to your website, the person who's using the app on their phone, it's the person who's on the receiving end of whatever you're building. So in the case of the church, we're doing this from the perspective of evangelism and sustaining, both for in-reach and outreach. The user here is going to be the people who are in your congregation, the people in your community, those you are targeting for outreach from an evangelism standpoint. So this is who we are defining as a user. And then you want to, again, find something that's feasible because we have a lot of different ways to do things. You can do something that's really effective. So let's say there may be someone who may look at our website for Brushfire and says, well, yes, this is functional, but I wanted to have something else that has like this flashing banner and something, all these other things. Well, yes, you could do that, but are you going to be getting the benefit from that if that's a $20,000 contract for some designer to come up with this thing that has this really special mechanism for flashing, and it's just really, really cool looking? Do you actually need that? Is it, so again, we're looking at it in terms of what's feasible, and both economically and also technologically, because there are some things where you may not realize technology already exists. to do something that you might think, though, this is way out there, but can you actually do this? And the answer may be yes. So part of what we want to do during the sessions will be to just think no limits. So at my job, we call this sometimes 10x thinking or moonshot thinking. So the people who decided, well, let's just go to the moon, and then let somebody else figure out, like, how can you do that? And then realizing that, yes, it is technically possible to do that. We've also heard some discussions with other people who are trying to do intergalactic spaceflight, and the fact that people actually are thinking about these things. So things that are, that you might think are, well, maybe way out there, may not be. So that's why we want to keep that in mind. And so again, design thinking is really focused on the user. So we want to first empathize with the user, be where they are. So if there's someone in your congregation or someone externally where they're experiencing things right now with, we had a lot of people who've lost a lot of loved ones. There may be people who may have lost their jobs. There may be some people who have a new job and a lot of additional responsibilities. What's really happening with the people? And observe what is their situation, what do they feel, how are they thinking, what are some of the things to keep in mind, and then we'll define a problem or a point of view, basically based on this particular perspective. So we use a term defining a persona, like we're defining the specific individual we're trying to design for. So we may give that person a name. And so we were saying, okay, we're designing for sister XYZ or brother XYZ who may have these types of characteristics and they have this point of view. So someone with the point of view who may say, well, gee, several years ago, we had these singles conventions, and then now we haven't had them. So how do I organize that? What do we do now? How do we engage? They have a different point of view than someone who may have never attended any conventions before. They may not even know, what it is. Maybe they attend church, but they have not engaged to the level where they are even aware of some of the Christian education classes or the conventions. And so what is their point of view, and how do they think? How do you address problems in the way they're thinking? And then once you define, then we'll ideate and identify the problems in order to find solutions. So let's just figure out what's really going on, and then what types of solutions were going to be available. And so here you think about solutions as different types of things you can do to serve. So how would you serve these individuals? We will later on get into what sort of technology can we leverage to help you serve. But really the first thing is really understand their problems and then finding solutions. And then we prototype, where we figure out how do you get these ideas out into the real world. And then we test it out and we learn and iterate and repeat. So this is a repeating process. There's a concept of what we call blameless activities or blameless postmortem. So once you test and iterate and do these things, let's say something went wrong and it failed horribly and it didn't do anything you wanted to do, absolutely nothing worked. Well, the fact that you did something and you've learned what doesn't work is actually valuable information. And so there's no blame assigned to anyone who's experimenting or doing these types of things. So it's not a failure of a person. It's a learning opportunity where we can learn and iterate and then try something else. So that's where we focus on the user. So listening to real people and really understanding them. So when you're doing outreach and you're communicating, again, those of you who may talk to people who are in maybe homeless shelters or maybe unhoused, or they may be on the street but living in a car or a van, they may have a very different perspective than what you might think before you talk to them. So you may end up talking to someone who's living in a van, who's actually an employee of a tech company, and they're just trying to save money. like their whole salary by just spending absolutely nothing on rent. Whereas you may also have someone who may be living in a van who has a different perspective, because for them it was an economic loss. There was something else. So we don't want to have preconceived notions of someone's point of view until we listen to them and talk to them, because all people are individuals. There may be some patterns that emerge, but sometimes there are things that we just don't know until we observe and we listen to them. So the first part of the design thinking exercise will be to construct the user's story and then think about them. And we define the user in your exercise by being very specific. So instead of it being a mother, it can be a mom of toddlers or empty nest mom in this location. You want to add some context to it, because your solution will be very specific. So I remember a time when at the National Baptist Convention Singles Conference, where they had people assigned to different cohorts. So the people who were widows were able to discuss some of the things that were relevant there. Those who've never been married and have never had children had different set of concerns. Those who may have been married previously or single moms, they had different concerns. So this is why we want to try to be specific about the user and the population. And again, depending on where they are and what they're doing, and so you don't have to spend a lot of time on this, and it's perfectly fine if right now you may just think of moms and you aren't really digging down to some of the other areas. The idea is just to have a starting point, and then we can always go from there. So we're not going to do the 10 minutes now. We're going to do the 10 minutes during the group discussion session. But the idea is to just, we're going to select the population, and then this is a brainstorming exercise where you don't limit yourself. You just list at least 10 challenges they face. What are the challenges of people in this population? Then we're going to define the actual problem statement itself. So the problem statement is going to say, based on this persona, what are the characteristics? What are their needs? What is preventing them from fulfilling their needs? Why is it a need? What's required for their result? So this is a little template we'll use to write this out. So, and we'll just give the user a name. So let's say if there's a person here, so we're naming the user here, Brother Carl Kindness. And so here we made an example where maybe a disabled veteran, and he needs maybe voter registration, absentee ballot information, or maybe he needs to get access to a veteran, the VA services, and in this case he can't travel or get his state ID for voting. Kim Patience is a retired widow, and she wants to share her gifts and be connected, because even though she's retired, she has a lot of gifts and a lot to share with people, and people can really learn, because she wants to be a useful servant. So understanding and then figuring out, well, what's preventing her from sharing her gifts? Is it because she doesn't have internet access, so she can't participate in some of the online activities and only by phone, or so understanding, well, what are the needs, and then what's actually blocking the needs? What are some of the potential problems here? And then we will just define the problem. You're going to narrow down on a particular problem, because for this exercise, you may go through this multiple times for different types of populations and different user types, but we want to at least go through it at least once for a population that's important to you. So then we create the problem statement, and then we define the problem, and then we will just go through and solve for the obstacle. So this is where we do just total unrestrained brainstorming, and no idea is off the table. So even if you think something is not relevant, has nothing to do with something else, it doesn't matter. Just we want to list everything. And then after we list everything, then we can prioritize. So there's a tool. Again, you could just write this on a piece of paper or in a document or Google Docs or whatever you may use. But there's also a note section in Brushfire. But this is an exercise you can just fold into sections. We have a blank piece of paper, and then just write out ideas in each of those areas. So you have those 8 sections, and you draw it out. And so after you draw out 8 solutions for each challenge, then we'll be able to share and then whittle down. So again, just write down 8 possible solutions. So for example, if someone didn't have access, and in the case of the retired widow, well, we may say, well, we can buy a satellite or something. That's fair game until we get to the point where we want to whittle down and prioritize and narrow down the options. It's probably fine, and everything is on the table. You may decide, maybe someone will help her get internet access, maybe get her a Chromebook, because that way you don't have to worry about security issues if there's like a Windows update or something like that. Or maybe it's a matter of someone checking in and physically going over there with and then sharing a pre-configured tablet already ready to view the live stream for the church. Or, so again, you may have a lot of different things you may come up with. And then after that, we start to prototype. And in the tech world, we call these like minimum viable products. And so this MVP minimum viable product, it just means that what's the minimum that will actually meet the requirements, and let's prototype that. So in some cases, this might just be some ideas, and it is perfectly fine if you are coming up with things that are problems to solve, and if you don't see a technology solution immediately, because just communicating that you have a solution is something we can do over technology. So we want to just focus on how to actually meet the needs and the challenges these people are facing, and then we can map out what that looks like from a technology perspective. So let's take the example if the widow needed to get internet access, but also had some people who could assist her with different types of activities, maybe on a Chromebook or something else. Well, maybe on the technology side, you may prototype a volunteer form to see who can volunteer to assist there. You may have a prototype of something that's related to what are the navigation updates to make it very easy for a senior to get access to Livestream. Or is there something you can provide to or maybe there's a phone tree, and say, people who are in like this particular sister circle or women's auxiliary should do this phone tree, and in order to do that, we have a Google Sheet with the list of who's doing what type of calls, and we just kind of draw out on a piece of paper, there's the little lines that say name and phone number. So prototyping can be really simple. And again, this is all to serve your needs. So if you stop at just a list of potential solutions, and then you just want to just kind of talk about these other things, if you aren't doing it on paper and prototyping that way, that's perfectly fine. But this is just one way of trying to see what works and what doesn't work. So maybe, for example, we said we have this form or this sheet, and then we realize we're not collecting the right information here. So we want to, actually draw out, we're collecting like their phone number and email address. And then what do you do for the people without email addresses or they're sharing phones? There may be some other things you may do there. This also comes up depending on what type of church management software you use. Sometimes those tools that are designed specifically for churches may manage things by household. And especially now, but even before last year, there may be a lot of different types of people in the household, or there may be people who used to be in the households who are no longer there, and so some of the information might not necessarily be accurate from a household standpoint, even though the numbers may be there. So you may decide to add in something else to say, well, let's just make a note if the household is different here, or maybe add another form, another entry to indicate are they in a nursing home now or not, or something else. So again, you have different ways of prototyping and then getting the feedback. So the idea is that a prototype, when we talk about minimum viable product, it is supposed to meet the full requirements. So some people may think in terms of phases and think, well, if we start with this and then we just add that incrementally, then we get to the end result. This is a case of what we don't want to do. So you don't want to just start off with one part and then eventually get to the end result, but this initial part isn't actually functional. So what we'd rather do is get something that's functional. So if you need something that's going to get someone from point A to point B, this will actually function as well, this little skateboard here, before you get to something larger. So when you're thinking about how you roll out your programs or some of these other activities, again, if it's a totally new thing, maybe someone says, we want an app for our church, it's okay to start off with just, what's the minimum you need to make sure it meets requirements? And then you can iterate and then you get to this point. So again, paper prototyping, don't have to worry about a lot of the details, but you can use Post-it notes, but it's just a way for you to envision what's there. And some people actually use vision boards. So if you've done like vision boards in the past, again, there are a lot of different ways of doing this with different techniques called different things. From a design thinking standpoint, we want you to identify some of these challenges now, and then before the end of the class to see if we can help you experiment and address some of these problems, or at a minimum, you have an action plan to implement some of these solutions to your problems, or to some of the initiatives you may want to put in place to address needs. And again, we're doing all this to support the community, but also to support evangelism. So when you're thinking about this, there's the in-reach and outreach, but then also again, evangelism. And after you do some of these prototypes, we also want to see, and this is where the group discussion will help, or if you want to connect with me directly, we'll be able to think about what's feasible. So is technology required? Is money needed? What resources are available? So I'll give you one example where it may be something requiring a lot of investment. So let's say within your church, you may need maybe additional ramps to make it more accessible for some of the seniors and those who are definitely able to get in. Maybe inside the structure, you want to reorganize things so that way you can have the technology portion available for so people who are sitting in the church might be able to view the scripture and view lyrics of the hymns on a screen, but you don't want it to be too prominent. You want it to be designed a certain way so it fits in with the church architecture. So that might require an actual architect and building engineers and other resources to really get that designed properly, versus something where someone might just put up something that's really simple, but it's not meeting the needs if the need is to be fully integrated into the church structure and not a distraction. So there are some scenarios where it may require some investment, and others it may be free. So we talked about a lot of free resources available with Google, but also Salesforce. We have a lot of things that are available for free, and then some are available at very low cost. And it may just be a matter of understanding those costs. And then the time, and the other piece, there may be grants available. So I had an instructor a couple of years ago who wrote grants. So as a pastor, he was able to get I think $100,000 to fund like a food pantry, because he wrote a grant. So if you don't write grants, then sometimes there may be resources you may not necessarily be able to pull in. So again, you can define the money needed, but just because there's a lot of money required, it doesn't mean you have to actually raise it just within your congregation. There may be grants, there may be other things available. So we'll go through, flesh out the ideas, and then understand technology needed, the time and money, resources, etc. And then we go through and do some testing. So hopefully, as we go through these weeks, if we flesh things out enough during the session today, you'll be able to meet some of your needs, and really get to do some of these other prototypes a bit later on. And so if you are able to attend, and so what I'm going to do is actually put into the chat the link for this evening. You'll be able to access it from the Brushfire platform. But you also will be able to just go directly into Google Meet. So I'm just going to paste this now because we will be concluding shortly. So I'm pasting this into both the YouTube chat and in the Brushfire chat. And so the discussion session later on today, and you should see that when you log in. You should see a 4 p.m. Discussion session, but you'll be able to participate using Google Meet. And those of you who may not have used Google Meet before, if they run into any issues, just let me know. We will also have a way for you to join via this type of live stream that I'm doing now, if there's if anyone has an issue. But basically, we're going to talk about what do you do with this iterative process, and then how do we sort of get back from that process into something that you're really going to implement. So I'm going to just pause now. After you've seen some of this, you may have a few more ideas. So I would like you to take some time to feel free to add additional ideas to the platform. This recording or this live stream will be ending at 1:30. So I'm just going to, again, share the link for the form. And if you can, if you have any additional ideas or comments or things you want to share, or something specific you want to work out for later on today, feel free to do so. Also, you may use this to communicate to me if you communicate with me if you are not able to. I just see a question from Evelyn Brown. Will the 4 p.m. discussion group be available on video replay? Yes, it will be available on video replay. Although it's there'll be a certain part of it where it'll make sense for you to go through and just play through. Others, it's just going to be really interactive. So there just maybe just as long as you set aside some time yourself to think about potential problems to solve. And then you can fill in the information in the feedback form so we understand what you're trying to address if you're not able to attend the session live today. And so yes, we'll definitely be able to do that. Yes. And yes, so today at 4 p.m. Eastern, we'll have the group discussion. And during the group discussion, I'll do a recap of design thinking. And then I would like all the participants to, again, if you can submit some of your forms in advance, that'll be great. But otherwise, we will just do some brainstorming together. And then you individually will come up with some of these personas and these ideas you want to address. And then after that, we'll go through that design thinking process from beginning to end, but also feel free to just submit feedback in the form around what you want to get out of the class specifically, because I will be adjusting content to meet the needs of the people who are attending the class. So if you are someone with, again, if you have something else you want to do or something very specific you need to tackle, the goal is to make sure you're able to work on that in the class. So now I just want to thank everyone for participating, and thanks again for addressing. Oh, yes. Yes. So the chat session will still be there. So what's happening on Brushfire is that the Brushfire platform will still have a link to the meeting. So go to Brushfire first. You can go to Brushfire first. We will be able to still have a chat session, but the idea of the meeting is to have you speaking, so you don't have to communicate just over chat. You'll be able to speak directly. You don't have to be on camera necessarily, but we will have it so you'll be able to join directly on site. And so this will, and so the session right now on the people who are joined on the Brushfire platform, we just ended. And I'm just going to say there is also live chat in Google Meet. The link to Google Meet will be on the Brushfire platform. Yes, so I will have multiple ways for people to interact. So please share, and thanks for joining. And then also the chat on YouTube doesn't show up in terms of the history for the Brushfire platform. So if there's something you want us to also address, or if you want others in the class to be aware of certain comments you have, feel free to do that also in the Brushfire platform. So thanks a lot for joining today. I'm going to be going offline now, but I really appreciate your engagement. And again, this one was done live, and I may look into in the future if it's more efficient to just to pre-record and just do live chat. I just wanted to get direct feedback, so if someone had a specific question, we could actually jump into some other areas. So that's why this one was live, even though in general you may see pre-recorded activities. So again, I apologize for anyone who may have run into issues in the platform earlier today. So thanks a lot, and have a blessed day.